It's time to talk money with Mary Holm, who is with me now in the Auckland studio. Hello, nice to see you again.
Hello, Emil. Thanks, you too.
We are talking today about buying property, buying a house or an apartment, which is a big decision.
Yeah, and the market quite suddenly, it seems turned in favour of buyers.
Is it in favour of buyers at the moment?
Yeah, yes. And for most of this century, it seems like it's been in favour of sellers, and in fact, buyers have kind of had to rush in and grab a place and not do too much homework on it, because otherwise they're going to miss.
You might miss out.
And what's more, they're going to have to put in a pretty high offer. But suddenly, there were some numbers came out this morning, actually. Cotality was saying that the new builds in New Zealand as a whole there's more new builds than there is population growth,
Right.
which is really shifting the balance in favour of buyers, especially in Auckland and Wellington. It's not in Hamilton and Tauranga.
Yeah.
And in other places, it's more variable, I think. But in Auckland and Wellington, and actually in Auckland, when you drive around, there are so many construction
So many.
sites.
It's amazing, isn't
Yeah,
it?
building townhouses and things like that.
And I suppose that's
Yeah,
the biggest. That's obviously the biggest factor on the price of property is supply and demand.
Yes, definitely. And so at the moment, I would say, it's a buyer's market more than it has been for a long time. And what I want to make my message is take your time, and because you've probably got the time to take. You don't have to snap up the first one that looks as though it might work for you.
Yeah.
The other thing is, don't try and time markets in property or shares or anything. People are saying, well, house prices might fall. They have fallen in recent years. They might fall further.
They might.
And they might.
And they might
not. and in the meantime, you're not living the way you want to live. I've learned over the years. I've bought and sold quite a few. In fact, I counted up this morning. I've actually bought 9 properties, nearly always because I was changing cities
9
or countries. Yeah, in my life. Yeah,
Wow.
nearly always because I was changing cities or countries.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I was sort of moving up market. And sometimes I've timed, or I and my partner have timed markets perfectly, and sometimes it's been appalling, and we've lost money on houses, and so a couple of times we've lost money on houses. So I don't recommend you try to time markets. I think you get on and do what works in your life.
It must be quite thrilling buying a house. I've never had the pleasure.
Look, it is exciting.
Yeah, I bet.
But that's one of the things. Don't get too carried away. So a couple of the ideas I had for things that you really should do is get hold of the LIM, the Land Information Memorandum, for every property from the local council. There's information on rates and resource planning consents, that kind of thing. But probably more importantly these days, there's information on erosion, flooding, health hazards, those kind of threats. And they were just saying on the radio a day or two ago that the quality of that information is going to be improved as of October.
Right.
So the LIMs are getting better in terms of being able to have a look and see if the place is likely to flood or likely to fall into the ocean or whatever, which is pretty important. Buying a LIM costs a few $100s usually. I looked at Auckland, it's $375, or if it's an urgent one and you want it within 3 days, it's $506.
Okay.
And that's sort of typical around the country. But often you don't have to buy one yourself. The real estate agent has got copies of the LIMs, and so always ask them if you can get one, and then make sure it's current.
Your mortgage broker can often help you out with things like that too, right? Yeah.
Yes, possibly. I don't know, but yeah. But if it comes down to having to buy it yourself, definitely do so. You've got, if you're getting pretty serious about a property, I would go ahead and spend that money.
It might cost you $350, but it might save you 300,000.
Yes, yes. And by the way, if an agent doesn't have a copy of the LIM, that's a slight warning, possibly, that there might be something on the LIM that doesn't look all that, not necessarily, but, something to just keep in mind. I recommend, if you can possibly go and look at a property at different times of the day and on weekdays and on weekends, to see if things like in different times of the day, see how sunny it is, and weather, also quite good to go on a windy day.
Yeah.
Good to go different times of day to have a look at noise. In some, especially in some more inner city type properties, they can be pretty noisy at different times of the
And you do
day.
when you own and live in a house, you live in it all the time.
Yes.
You don't just live in it when
No,
it's sunny.
You can't do, that's right. Yes, it's really a good idea to look at it when it's raining,
Yeah.
actually. Yes, yeah. And parking these days is getting to be more and more of an issue. In some places, you want to go in the evening when the other people who live round about are probably there and have parked their cars, and see if there's easily parking for you and for your friends. Sometimes that's quite a big issue.
Can you tell me? Let's talk a bit about actually making a bid and
Yes.
trying to actually buy a house. So you found a place that you like. You figured out your budget. And someone actually has just sent a text in. My son and his partner at an auction yesterday buying their first home. They were told one other phone bidder just came in the day before. Do they have to be told how many bidders? My son and his partner became a bit suspicious during bidding whether there was actually another genuine bidder, but they pulled out anyway because they couldn't afford a higher bid.
Yes.
And the house was passed on. Can auctioneers or the owner put in false bids? And I suppose more broadly, when you are bidding for a property, it seems like this ancient, arcane Greek, ancient Greek
it's very
sacrifice
dramatic.
ritual thing, doesn't it?
It's very dramatic. I've bought and sold at auctions. I understand that the auctioneer cannot take false bids anymore.
Right.
They did back when we were selling a house once. He was taking bids, and then he took us aside and said, "None of those bids are real. I'll never forget it."
Wow.
And we ended up selling the house for a very low price after the auction. But I understand they can't do that anymore. But I highly recommend anyone who's thinking of buying at auction to go to other auctions, go along and watch them, watch the dynamics before you actually get involved. And the other thing is you must set yourself a maximum before you go.
Yeah.
And just don't go over that. Because one of my main messages today, because I know we're running a bit short of time, but one of the main messages is it's very easy to think this is the only house for me, and you get caught up in an auction or whether there's an auction or not, whether you're just negotiating via the agent, you can get carried away. Oh God, this is the perfect place for us, and there's going to be nothing else like it. And I've been there quite a few times, and there is something else that is just as good and better, and not as good in some ways and better in other ways around the corner. Do not convince yourself that this is the only one for you.
The fear of missing out has removed many zeros from many bank accounts
Yes.
over the years.
It absolutely has. It has.
You talked about the importance of setting an upper limit. What about the importance of going in with a bid that is, in your best interest, but isn't going to scare off or insult the seller?
Yeah, at an auction, I don't think that applies.
Right.
I don't think there's much to stop you coming in with a pretty low bid. When you're just negotiating just through an agent, I have seen situations where you can insult them and they just, no, we're not going to have anything to do with you.
Right.
And the seller will get into a psychological state that isn't very good for them, but they'll just don't want to sell to you.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't go and... there's a whole lot of psychology in all of this. Couple of other quick tips, if that's all right.
Please.
One is to check the neighbourhood. Check if there are schools nearby, even if you don't need schools, even if you haven't got kids, because it will affect selling the house later on. And I have actually at times knocked on neighbours' doors or hung around and talked to neighbours, and you get a feel for the neighbourhood then. It might be a biased feeling, but you get some idea of whether it's kind of friendly neighbourhood or not. Look for valuations online. There's a lot these days.
And they can vary quite wildly from
yes, they can.
source to source, can't they?
Yeah, they can. And so look at all of them, I'd say, and that'll give you quite a good feel for QV's one, but there are several others. Get a building inspection from a registered builder. I really underline that one.
Oh, yeah.
They cost a few $100s, but... The other thing is they do a written report for you with photos, but it's much better if you can go along with them when they do the inspection. Go up into the roof, go under the house with them, and the inspector will be saying, I'm not so sure about this. And one of the things you can then say, oh, look, what would it cost to fix that?
Yeah, right.
And the builder can immediately give you a rough idea. You get a much better feel if you go with them. Now, that does cost a few $100s again, and so what you can do is put in an offer contingent on getting a good building inspection.
Yeah.
And so that's one way around that, not going to that expense until the offer's been accepted. And once again, if the seller's saying, oh, no, I don't want to do that, you've got to start thinking, well, is this because the building inspector's going to discover that it's rat infested or something horrible, that there's been big leaks or something like that. So that can be a good sign.
And I guess a sort of an overall thing, so we've not too long left, but is that it's not about being nice buying a house, is it? It's not about being nice and protecting people's feelings. You have to protect yourself.
Yes, although you do, and yes, you look after yourself. I know of one couple once who bought a house. They wrote a letter to the seller. They must have found out their address and said, look, we probably aren't going to be giving you the highest offer, but we want to raise our children in this neighbourhood. We love the look of your house. And they got the house, and they were told by the seller that they hadn't put in the highest offer, but the seller just so wanted to sell the house to this nice family. So that's a side to it too. Now that I've said that on the radio, probably every single person's going to be doing that.
You could start a business. You could start a business drafting those.
Yeah.
Great stuff. All right, Mary Holm, thank you very much as always.
Thanks, Emil.
Catch you next time. That is Mary Holm.